Alrighty. Okay. So, today we're going to be going over coding bat once again. So, we're going to be continuing along the same path that we've been going, like in the past couple of classes. So we're just going to continue doing some basic review questions, making sure you guys really know what's going on. So we can go ahead and so out of these three sections, so we've done pretty much every problem in Logic 2. We still have a couple problems to do in List 2, and a couple of problems to do in String 2. So hopefully you guys are a little more comfortable with these types of problems. So we can go ahead, we can jump into this first problem over here. This is going to be called End Other. So go ahead, read the instructions, go over the cases that they have over here, make sure you understand the problem, and then I want you just to write out like kind of a basic pseudocode. Nothing too fancy is needed right now. So once you guys get to that, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. So hopefully you guys were able to come up with at least some sort of basic pseudocode. Didn't have to be anything too fancy. So we come over here, we see given two strings, return true if either of the strings appears at the very end of the other string. So we ignore the upper slash lower case differences, meaning that it's not case sensitive. So case sensitive basically means that it thinks ABC is not equal to this, but non-case sensitive means ABC is in fact equal to that, right? So what it's telling us to do over here is s.lower. So s.lower essentially just turns whatever format of uppercase and lowercase that we have over here all into just all lowercase. So essentially removes all types of cases, right? That could possibly, confuse us in any sort of way. So we are given the function and other, and we're given a and b. So we need to think, alright, well, we're given these two strings, and we need to try and see which one can fit behind the other one. So first of all, we need to get a long string and a short string, right? So let's say length is equal to longer if A is longer than B, right? So this is telling us true if A is longer than B and false if B is longer than A. So this is going to come in handy in one of our if statements later on when we try and kind of separate our two cases out so we can properly complete this problem. And once we determine, alright, one of them is longer than the other one, well, that means that obviously the longer one can't fit inside the shorter one, so we have to see if the shorter one fits inside the longer one. So we have to see if length is true, right, which means that if A is indeed longer than B, then that means that B will fit into A, right? So this is only asking for at the very end. So first thing that we need to do is we need to store the length of B somewhere. So we can just call this length of B for now, right? So we get length of B, and we also have length of A over here. But we can remember from last time, I believe, there's a special index in which instead of having to go, say, from 0 all the way to length of A, we can rather just go ahead and ignore the number that comes after this semicolon. So we can just leave X as blank and it'll automatically assume this is the end. So all that we need to put in this one over here is going to be length of A minus length of B. So what exactly does this give us, right? Well, what this gives us is the string at the very end of A that is the same length as B. So when we get this, all that needs to happen now is we need to compare this with the actual string B. So we need to take if string dot lower is equal to B dot lower, right? Then we can go ahead and we know this is a correct case. And then we need to think about, alright, well, we figured out one case already. How can we go ahead and take care of the other case? Well, if we already know this is how we can do this if A is longer, then all we need to do is write an else statement and reverse A and B in every single one of these. So what we can do is we can literally just copy this, or right here. We can copy this, we can paste it right here, and all we need to do is replace every single A with B and every single B with A. And our resulting statement is going to say this is correct case, only if this proves to be true. Right? Now, once this happens, we can go ahead and we can determine that there's only one case left, which is the not working case. So once it passes through these two if statements, we can see that every single other case is going to be wrong. And so this is not a correct case is what is going to be returned at the end. So this is the basic pseudocode. Now one thing is, if you're ever getting stuck on this, many times this show hint over here will appear on harder problems. So if we go over here and we do show hint, it'll tell us something. So in Python, s1.ends with s2 tests if string s1 ends with s2. So this significantly simplifies this problem down, right? And instead of having to write this complicated if statement over here, we can just put this code into there. So I want you guys first to make sure you understand the pseudocode, and second of all, understand how we can implement this into this problem. So I will give you, I would say maybe 4 minutes to do this, and so I guess see you back in 4 minutes. hopefully you're able to understand what's going on here. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn this pseudocode into actual code. So we can go down here. We're not going to erase the pseudocode. So we're going to say length is equal to A is length of A is greater than length of B. So you may be wondering, well, what is this? Right? This seems to be just kind of a variable storing this inequality. Well, Python is special in that it can perform an action, and based upon that action, you can go ahead and determine whether or not what the value of this action is, essentially, and it'll go ahead and store it in the variable for you. So it does two steps in one, almost. And so we can go ahead and we can use that here. So length is equal to if length of A is greater than length of B. And now we can think, alright, so if length is true, so essentially if length, right, because automatically if we just put if length, it's assuming we're asking is length equal to true, right? If, so this is where this special command comes in here. We can go ahead and type if S1 or A, right, dot ends with B, then we can go ahead and return true. We can write the same thing, right? Else, if B dot ends with A, we can go ahead and return true. And if this is not the case, then we can go ahead and return false. So this code over here is literally exactly this pseudocode, except turned into, I guess, other code. I'm not entirely sure how to say it. But we need to think, alright, well, we just went ahead and we took the ends with and we just compared these two. But we forgot about the dot lower here. And this is where it's important to not take the hints and just put it in there without considering exactly what's actually going on. So we need to make sure that we have our cases right, because it specifically asks for us to go ahead and and put the cases as all lowercase in order to remove case sensitive cases. So, oh, whoops, not mean to run that. So now that we have this, we can now go ahead and check this code against our pseudocode over here. So it's important to be able to kind of translate it from our original code to the pseudocode. And when we go ahead and we do this, many times it can be a step that's hard to take at first. But as you practice it, it'll get easier and easier over time, right? So I'll give you guys about a minute to kind of compare these two, and then I'm going to go ahead and run it so you can see exactly how it works. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete the pseudocode, and I'm going to run it. And as you can see, we got all the cases right. Go ahead and make sure you understand this. And now I'm going to go over some important tips and tricks, I guess. Alright, so some important things I have learned through the years of my programming experience is that oftentimes the two longest stages of programming is figuring out what in the world is going on, right? What I mean by this is going to be the very first, maybe you could consider this your second step that you're taking. Because many times the problems that you're given are going to be given so that you can't solve them manually. So you essentially can't just brute force the problem. It's going to be something that you have to write an algorithm for. And many times when you write these algorithms, they don't seem entirely intuitive. But it's important to learn how to adapt to these, because by learning exactly how your programming can work and what you can do with it, it makes your life a lot easier. So one of my suggestions is when you go ahead and say you decide that you want to do bigger programs, right, longer ones, what I suggest is you do some research into the different special methods of Python, because each programming language has something unique to it. Now, obviously each one has something different to it. Python is especially good for artificial intelligence, which is a new branch of programming that is kind of it's something that a lot of programmers talk about and want to be able to, do well. So when you go ahead and you do this, and you want to take that step into more advanced programming, what you can do is research. Just go online, just Google, say, Python AI, and the sites that you want to go to, you want to read over, aren't going to be the sites that have all the code on it, all the answers on it, but rather the sites that actually explain what is going on. And in doing this, this means that you will be able to go ahead and really understand what is happening. So for every single one of the problems, instead of, say, being stuck on it and going like, oh, what is this even talking about? It's instead going ahead and looking at it like, okay, well, I was told that these were the steps that I was supposed to take in a problem. Now let me see how I can apply this to this specific problem. And now that I know the steps that I'm supposed to take, this is a lot easier than if I had no clue what in the world was going on. So this is kind of like a common theme that's applicable in a lot of like more difficult problems, not just programming problems, because many times these problems don't come down to your programming experience, but rather logical thinking, right? So the second longest part is going to be going ahead and debugging your program. Because many times you can have your idea straight, right? But converting it into actual programming can be hard at times. And this is where programming experience is involved. So essentially, the more programming experience you have, the faster you'll get at this. And over time, get you'll get more and more confident with your programming, and you'll make less and less mistakes over time, and this is going to be a shorter and shorter process. So those are my two big tips for as to how you can program more efficiently, how you can program and not have to waste as much time, right? So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right now. If you don't, we'll see you guys next week. There will be class next week. This coding bat course will be wrapping up soon, as we are almost finished with almost all the tougher coding bat problems. So I recommend you go ahead, you do some practice when you get home, or rather after this class, before next class, because really the only way you're going to get better at some of these is just doing them over and over again, right? So yeah, if nobody has any questions, then you can leave right now. If you do, I'll stick around for a couple minutes to see if you have any. Alright, so it does not look like anyone has any questions for today. So thank you for watching, thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you next week, I guess. Thank you.